America was changing its face. The streets were filled with protests, music, hope, and anger. People spoke about freedom, about the future, about breaking old rules. But while the country looked forward, something else was quietly moving in the opposite direction. Something patient, something watching. On December 20th, 1968, the road outside Vallejo was empty. A quiet lover's lane, a place where cars parked not to be seen, a place that felt safe precisely because no one paid attention to it. David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen sat inside a car, unaware that their lives were about to become part of a story no one would ever finish. A second vehicle pulled in behind them. At first, nothing happened. Then headlights, movement, a man stepping out of the darkness. He didn't rush, he didn't shout. He raised a gun. Moments later, silence returned to the road, broken only by the sound of footsteps leaving the scene. When police arrived, they found two young people who would never grow older. And no suspect. At first, it seemed like a tragedy, senseless, cruel, but isolated. Police searched for motives, jealousy, robbery, rage. None of it fit. There was no message, no explanation, no name. Just the feeling that something had brushed past them and vanished. 7 months later, it happened again. Another couple, another quiet place, another calm, methodical attack. This time, one victim survived. And for the first time, the killer spoke, not to the police, but to the press. Letters arrived at newspapers across California. They were written neatly, confidently, as if the author expected to be read. Inside them, details only the killer could know, and a symbol. A circle, a cross, the Zodiac. Fear spread faster than facts. People locked their doors earlier. Parents watched their children more closely. Police departments compared notes and found only confusion. The killer wasn't hiding. He was performing. Each letter was a reminder, I am still here. Each cipher was a challenge, you are not smart enough. What made him different wasn't just the violence, it was the patience. He waited between attacks. He watched the reactions. He adjusted. He didn't want to disappear. He wanted to be remembered. By the end of 1969, California wasn't just searching for a murderer. It was searching for a shadow with a voice. A man who turned fear into correspondence, death into a puzzle, and investigation into obsession. The Zodiac Killer had entered the public imagination, and once he did, he never truly left. The letters changed everything. They arrived without warning, plain envelopes, no return address. At first, editors assumed it was a cruel hoax, someone feeding off tragedy. But as the pages were unfolded, the tone made people pause. The writer wasn't emotional. He wasn't angry. He was amused. He described the murders with precision, distances, timings, details that had never been published, enough to make denial impossible. At the bottom of the page, the same symbol appeared again, a circle, a cross, and a name that had never existed before, now impossible to forget, Zodiac. Police departments were forced into the open. The killer demanded it. He insisted the letters be printed on the front pages, threatened more deaths if they were ignored. Newspapers argued, hesitated, then complied.
Fear became public. Families read the words over breakfast. Teenagers stared at the ciphers as if they were dares. Somewhere in California, a man watched it all unfold and felt seen. The ciphers looked simple at first. Symbols, patterns, repeating shapes. Teachers tried to solve them. Cryptographers offered theories. Ordinary people sat at kitchen tables late into the night, convinced they were one insight away from cracking the mind of a killer. Some codes were solved. The message underneath was chillingly empty. I like killing people because it is so much fun. There was no manifesto, no cause, no higher meaning, just pleasure. As the attention grew, so did the boldness. On July 4th, 1969, another couple was attacked near Vallejo. This time, the killer didn't vanish into darkness. He stayed. He approached calmly. He spoke softly. He tied them up. Then he stabbed them. One victim lived. And with that survival came something dangerous. A description. A man. Average height. Unremarkable. Someone who could disappear into any crowd. Weeks later, the Zodiac called the police. He identified himself. He described the crime. He corrected details. The voice on the line was steady, not rushed, not afraid, as if reporting weather. The end called, the line went dead. The city exhaled, and then realized it had been holding its breath far too long. Investigators chased fragments, handwriting analysis, phone records, witness sketches. Suspects came and went, each promising clarity, each collapsing under scrutiny. The problem wasn't lack of effort, it was abundance. Too many tips, too many theories, too many people who wanted to be part of the story. And somewhere within that noise, the Zodiac hid comfortably. The killer didn't need to strike often. The letters did the work for him. Each envelope reignited fear. Each cipher reminded everyone that he hadn't been caught, that he could strike again, that he might already be watching. By the end of 1969, the investigation had become something else entirely. Not a hunt for a man, but a battle for control of a narrative. The Zodiac wasn't just killing. He was directing attention, setting the pace, deciding when the world would look his way. And the authorities, despite their badges and resources, were always reacting, never leading. The killer wanted to be understood, but not stopped. And that, more than anything, is what made him untouchable.
San Francisco, October 11th, 1969. The city breathed differently at night. Streetlights blurred into fog, car horns echoed off steep hills, and people moved with the quiet confidence of those who believed danger belonged somewhere else. Paul Stein believed that too. He was a cab driver, young, polite, nearly done with his shift. When a man waved him down near Union Square, nothing felt unusual, just another fare, another address. Washington and Cherry. An ordinary ride. The man sat in the back seat, average build, short hair, calm voice. They talked briefly, about directions, about nothing that mattered. When the cab stopped, the gun came out. One shot. Precise. Final. Paul Stein slumped forward, dead before he understood what was happening. And for the first time, the Zodiac didn't run. He stayed in the streetlight. He leaned into the cab, took the victim's wallet, cut a piece of the blood-stained shirt. Witnesses watched from a nearby house, teenagers peering through a window, confused by the stillness of it all. They called the police, and for a moment, everything aligned. The description went out over the radio. A suspect. White male. Short hair. But somewhere between the call and the response, a mistake slipped through. The broadcast said black male.
When officers arrived, they saw a white man walking calmly away from the scene. They passed him, nodded, and kept going. Minutes later, the error was realized. Too late. The Zodiac had vanished into the city. Not by speed, not by chaos, by being ordinary. The letters returned quickly after that. He bragged, not loudly, precisely. He described the murder, included proof, mocked the police for their failure, for letting him walk past them in uniform shadow. He wasn't angry, he was delighted. San Francisco changed overnight. Taxi drivers refused late fares. People scanned faces on sidewalks. Every stranger felt like a possibility. The killer had crossed a line. He wasn't attacking lovers' lanes anymore. He was killing in the city. Public, visible, confident. The police redoubled efforts. Composite sketches were released. Phones rang endlessly. Suspects multiplied. One man in particular began to surface repeatedly. He fit the description. He lived nearby. He wrote strangely. His name would echo through the investigation for decades, but proof never followed. Just suspicion. The Zodiac seemed to sense the tightening net. The letters became more erratic, more demanding, more theatrical. He threatened school buses, claimed victims without evidence, expanded his legend faster than facts could catch up. It was no longer clear where the crimes ended and the performance began. And that uncertainty was his greatest protection. The San Francisco murder should have ended it. Witnesses, a sketch, a near miss with police. Any other killer would have been caught. But the Zodiac wasn't interested in being caught. He was interested in being remembered. By the end of 1969, the trail was warm and already fading. The man in the back seat of the cab had walked into history and walked right out again.
The investigation didn't slow down. It scattered. Files multiplied, desks filled with photographs, handwriting samples, maps marked with pins and strings that promised meaning but delivered none. Every department had its own theory. Every theory had its own favorite suspect, and none of them were enough. One name surfaced again and again. It came from tips, from former friends, from people who recognized something unsettling in the tone of the letters. A man who liked puzzles, who spoke about killing too casually, who seemed to enjoy attention just a little too much. He fit the idea of the Zodiac perfectly, but ideas don't make arrests. Police searched his home. They found weapons, legal, books, disturbing but common, notes, strange but inconclusive. Handwriting experts disagreed. Witnesses hesitated. Alibis hovered in gray areas, never solid, never broken. The case pressed forward, then slid back again. Always almost. Meanwhile, the letters kept coming. Some were shorter, some were rambling, some felt desperate. The Zodiac complained about being ignored, about newspapers shortening his messages, about losing control of the story he had so carefully built. Threats escalated, claims grew bolder, but the killings slowed. No confirmed murders followed, which raised a new question, one no one wanted to ask out loud. Was he finished? Investigators argued behind closed doors. Had the Zodiac died, been imprisoned for something else, lost interest once the attention faded? Or was he still there, watching, satisfied that fear alone was enough? Without new crimes, the case began to cool. Not officially, emotionally. Time does something dangerous to unsolved cases. It doesn't erase them, it softens them. Witnesses forget details, memories blur, urgency dissolves into procedure.
The Zodiac became less a man and more a symbol, a cautionary tale, a headline from another era, a puzzle passed between generations of detectives. Families of victims waited. They waited for answers that never arrived, for closure that never came, for a name that could be carved into certainty. Instead, they received silence. The killer's greatest achievement was not the murders. It was the void he left behind. A space where truth should have been, filled instead with theories, documentaries, books, and endless debate. Everyone had a version of the Zodiac. No one had him. By the early 1970s, the letters stopped. No announcement, no farewell, just absence. And absence somehow felt worse than threat, because it meant the story had no ending. The Zodiac Killer was no longer active, but he was not gone. He lived in files, in sketches, in the uncomfortable truth that sometimes intelligence, effort, and manpower are still not enough. Somewhere between certainty and doubt, he disappeared and took his name with him.
The silence was never explained. No confession, no arrest, no final letter tying the story together. The Zodiac Killer simply stopped speaking, and that unsettled people more than any threat ever had. Years passed, then decades. The files were boxed, reopened, reorganized, and boxed again. New detectives inherited old questions. Each believed distance might bring clarity. The time would reveal what chaos had hidden. It didn't. The evidence aged poorly. DNA degraded. Witnesses died. Memories softened into impressions. What remained was a shape without edges. Suspects continued to rise and fall. Some were convincing. Some were theatrical. Some fit too perfectly, which made investigators wary. Modern technology offered hope. DNA testing, digital comparisons, algorithmic handwriting analysis. Each advancement promised resolution. Each one stopped just short of certainty. Close enough to argue, never close enough to conclude. The Zodiac became something larger than himself. A myth reinforced by failure. A mirror reflecting every fear about randomness and control. He was studied in classrooms, debated in documentaries, recreated in films. Everyone knew the symbol. No one knew the man. For the families, the passage of time offered no relief. Justice delayed did not soften loss. It only complicated it. They watched as the story grew louder while the truth remained silent. As speculation replaced answers. As the killer became famous, and the victims became footnotes. The question lingered in every retelling. Was the Zodiac smarter than everyone else, or simply lucky? Perhaps the most unsettling answer was that it didn't matter, because the system failed either way. The Zodiac Killer was not remembered for who he was. He was remembered for what he exposed. That even in an age of progress, organization, and confidence, a single man could step out of the dark, speak loudly, and vanish without consequence. That sometimes crimes do not end. They just stop. Somewhere, the truth still exists. In a name, in a memory, in a detail overlooked one final time, or nowhere at all. And that possibility, that the answer may be gone forever, is the Zodiac's final act. Not murder, but uncertainty.